Welcome to Life by a Thousand Cuts, a podcast series about skin cancer surgery. I am your host, Associate Professor Tony Dicker, and in each episode we'll share practical insights to support your skin cancer surgical practice, from clinical tips and case studies to journal reviews and interviews with skin cancer colleagues. Today we're looking at some recent changes in the Medicare schedule and some legislation regarding healing by secondary intention. So let's get into it. So, as you're probably aware, Medicare is legislation. It's a federal government act from many, many years ago. And each year when they make amendments to the Medicare schedule, they have to do this through Acts of Parliament. And this is the Health Insurance Legislation Amendment for 2025, which was submitted to the Governor-General and approved in October the 2nd of 2025 and comes into effect as of the 1st of November of 2025. There's a whole lot of change in this, as there always is, and one of the significant changes for us is this amendment relating to surgical operations, where they've changed some of the wording. They have to go through it item by item. So item number 31356 has to have that change of wording specified, and item 31357 has to have that change of wording specified, and it keeps on going for every relevant item number. But what's actually really happened here is probably a better question. Let's have a look at what the current wording is if you were performing a removal of a basal cell carcinoma from the inner canthus. So up here in the corner of the nose. Malignant lesion, a basal cell qualifies there. We're doing definitive surgical excision other than by shave removal. So just removing by shave does not count in this circumstance. It's got to be the intention to remove the entire lesion by excision. And that the item number covers the repair, but part of the new change in wording is if performed. So it doesn't have to have a repair, but it includes the repair if a repair is performed. Now, excision is from nose, eyelid, eyebrow, lip, ear, digit, or genitalia for this particular item number, and also contiguous areas. It has a size more than 6 millimeters. Excision specimen is sent for histological examination, so you must send it away to pathology. Malignancy is confirmed from the excision specimen or previous biopsy. Now, the other interesting changing in the wording here is previously it was included all by specialist opinion, and that's been taken away as well. So it includes a repair if performed, but you don't have to perform a repair. And this allows for secondary intention healing to be covered by this. Let's just go through a case study of what that is. And I apologize for those of you who may have seen this before. I presented this case study a little bit over a year ago, but it was quite pertinent to what we're doing now. For those of you who are listening, I'll do my best to describe the lesions I'm showing rather than just making you guess what's happening. I've got a picture of a 73-year-old man with a small papule in his right inner canthus. No symptoms, no bleeding, patient unaware of the spot, and he's otherwise well. He's had a melanoma in situ in the past, no further complications from that. He's on some statins, is his only medication, no blood thinning agents, which is always nice to know when you're doing surgery. And the dermoscopy image I'm showing now is always difficult in this area. Then the inner canthus, it is very difficult to get a dermatoscope into that corner. There's a couple of techniques for doing so, but that dermoscopy is still consistent with a basal cell carcinoma as we suspected clinically. So a shiny papule with telangiectasia, that's certainly the most likely diagnosis. So the question then is how to manage this. Your suspicion is that it's a basal cell, and therefore in a well person like this, the expectation is that you're going to be providing some sort of treatment. There'd be fairly extraordinary circumstances to not treat this lesion for a person in this circumstance. And so you should be thinking through what your options are. And if you're looking at the picture, you can sort of try to think about, can I do a primary closure? What sort of flap might I do? Is all part of the thought process of how to approach surgery for this. Now, of course, in performing any surgery, you might take a biopsy first, is quite reasonable. And whether that's a shave or a punch biopsy is okay. But that procedure, if you did so, would confirm this is a nodular basal cell carcinoma. And then in planning your surgery, the first thing you do is you're trying to identify the edges of the lesion as best you can clinically, marking around those edges, then adding a relevant clinical margin to that with the intention of, I'm going to remove this entire tumour. You must remove it obviously laterally as well as depth. And so thinking through that process of how you're going to make sure the entire lesion is cleared and obviously afterwards confirming that by histology. So in this circumstance here, for the images I'm showing, you can see I had the lesion marked out and I've cut around the outside of my blue pen markings, and that's removed the entire lesion. If I show you a stretched out picture of this area after the initial surgical excision, you can see a couple of little marks from the diathermy there. So 3 or 4 vessels required sealing over, but you can see a nice clear base to it of the underlying fascia and edges where there's no more of the pen markings visible. So that's one of my plans always, is once I've marked out a lesion, in my excising of it, I make sure I'm cutting outside my pen marks. That's always a good process. So clean fascia at the base, we're above the tear duct, and then I have to consider any underlying anatomy there, such as the tear duct is very important in your planning, much more so, as well as when you're actually performing the procedure. So in this case, we're going to let this area heal by secondary intention, and the dressings for this are quite simple. So even though there's a good dry wound bed, still adding something as a absorbent such as a caltostat as a simple dressing to get a bit of hemostasis is advisable, because there'll be some degree of ooze once the adrenaline from the anesthetic is worn off. And then for this location in the corner of the eye, you've got to be careful with your dressings. So here I like these softer silicone-based dressings, which are a little bit more flexible, and that's able to hold the caltostat in place without disturbing the movement of the eye. So there's going to be something visible in the patient's corner of eye, but it's not going to be irritating or rubbing. This is also where I love the frozen peas for ice packs. So something that's easier to mold its shape, so I can get into the corner. I'm telling my patients to have some frozen peas, a little plastic sandwich bag, and just holding that in the corner of the eye as part of the pain relief. So ice is very good for pain relief as well as assisting the hemostasis. And this dressing can stay there for a week if the dressing's intact, but if it does come off earlier, it's okay for the patient to do further dressings or even leave it open and cleaning the area. At the 1 week mark, we're peeling off this tape and soaking the area with some saline. It's important to use saline here rather than other agents in removing this dressing. The caltostat often does peel away quite easily in one piece once you soak it off with saline. I'm always advising people to dab the area at the base to clean it rather than rubbing it. If you rub it too vigorously, you can disturb this new, fresh, granulating tissue, and that'll make it bleed more. But we're actually removing some of the tissue we want there. We want the granulation tissue at the base for these wounds to heal. Then something simple like a solid gel or even a Vaseline to fill the residual hole. I do discourage use of alcohol this close to the eye, and also discourage chlorhexidine this close to the eye. If you're careful, it's unlikely, but still, is it worth the risk when saline's enough to clean the area? We get our histology back at the week mark, and yes, it's going to be close to a deep margin as expected, because it's only a very thin lesion in the first place. It wasn't much of a deep fascia, but it is clear of the deep margin. And we've got over 1 millimeter histologically clear of the lateral edges in the planes examined. So as far as we can tell, this lesion is now cleared, and we saw from our photographs at the 1 week mark, healing up quite nicely. So at this stage, I was comfortable that nothing else was required apart from the further expected healing from the patient. Had the margins been involved, then it is actually quite easy at this stage to go back and re-excise, because the defect is still open and obvious. You're not opening up a wound to try to then reassess the edges. Now, this patient came back at the 6-month mark for their routine check. They reported that within 2 or 3 weeks, the wound had healed. So after the surgery, they only had to attend for 1 visit, and everything was running smooth, and they were very comfortable and happy themselves to do the remaining parts of the management. They didn't have any watering eyes or irritation from it. There was no signs of any recurrence, and certainly we stretched the area with bright lights and carefully examined where the lesion was. We referred back to previous photographs to identify, because it was actually difficult to tell where the original surgical site was, as you can see from this image. So obviously the patient was pretty happy with his outcome from secondary intention healing, which they didn't find too bothersome to manage. A couple other examples of secondary intention healing. So inside the conchal bowl, as the image is showing here. And again, these images are taken 6 months apart. We excised an area which was a squamous cell carcinoma. Again, we're happy that it was histologically clear, left to heal by secondary intention, and a really nice result. It didn't require a graft or anything complicated. This just heals up very nicely by itself and very easy to follow afterwards as well. You've got a very clear, smooth area to keep under review in case there was some residual tumour that unexpectedly still there. Another example showing in these photographs from the original lesion, from the early healing and the 6-month healing in this patient in the conchal bowl, where really they just don't even know that the lesion is there. None of their friends or family are sort of saying, oh, what's that funny patch of skin in your ear? It really does heal up to a stage where no one's really aware that the surgical procedure has taken place in those locations, is the nice result we get here. So I want you to consider secondary intention, especially for some of these concave areas. I've shown you inner canthus and conchal bowl as 2 examples of that. The dressings are very simple and the healing's quite easy over a 3 to 4 week period. So maybe a little bit longer than what you might be looking at for a excision and closure, but they can heal quite quickly and certainly can be faster than cryotherapy or electrocautery. There's a lot less necrosis at the wound base when you're doing secondary intention compared to applying those other devices. Antibiotics for these lesions are usually not required, although that's obviously a case-by-case basis. And like most surgery, if you feel there is a need for antibiotics, it's usually as a prophylactic pre-surgical dose rather than a treatment dose for infection. You only should be using antibiotics if there's an actual infection rather than a full course of antibiotics to prevent infection. But also, the other thing to consider with secondary intention is patients can get a little bit anxious about having a hole in their skin. The idea of actually not closing it can induce some anxiety for some patients and is worth considering, at least explaining that and making sure they're comfortable with that sort of part of the process. Look, I hope you find that useful. It's, again, I apologise for those who've seen these cases before, but it was quite relevant given the recent changes in the Medicare schedule to understand that technically now you can charge the item numbers related to skin cancer removal when you do secondary intention healing. So that's all for today. I hope you found this episode useful. For those who are listening, you may want to go and look at the video version of this podcast so you can see some of those pictures. And I hope you've picked up something practical to use in your clinical work. Big shout out to HealthCert, of course, for all their help with production and distribution of this episode. They do a lot of good things in the skin cancer education space, including helping get this podcast out to you. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time on Life by 1,000 Cuts.